Marcus Wellington sat in the back of his luxury sedan, scrolling through his phone as rain hammered against the windows. His driver navigated through the storm-soaked streets toward the airport where his private jet waited. Marcus was heading to close a massive tech deal that would add another billion to his empire. At 35, he'd built everything from nothing, and tonight's flight represented the culmination of 5 years of negotiations. His assistant had packed his bags, arranged his meetings, and ensured every detail was perfect for the 3-week trip abroad. As they stopped at a red light, Marcus glanced up from his screen and saw her. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, huddled under a broken bus shelter with a baby wrapped in what looked like a thin blanket. The rain was coming down sideways, soaking them both despite her attempts to shield the child. Something about the way she held that baby, protecting it with her own body while shivering in the cold, made Marcus's heart clench. He watched as cars drove past, splashing water onto them, and not a single person stopped to help. "Pull over," Marcus heard himself say. His driver, James, looked confused but obeyed without question. Marcus grabbed his umbrella and stepped out into the downpour, his expensive shoes immediately soaked. He walked toward the woman, who looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. She was beautiful despite her circumstances, with exhausted features and wet hair plastered to her face. The baby in her arms couldn't have been more than 6 months old, and Marcus could see the child was dangerously cold. "Come on," he said gently, holding the umbrella over them both. "Let me help you." The woman, who introduced herself as Zara, hesitated for a long moment before accepting Marcus's outstretched hand. She clutched her baby daughter, Amara, closer to her chest as Marcus guided them toward his car. James opened the door, his professional expression never wavering despite the unusual situation. Once inside the warm vehicle, Zara couldn't stop shaking, though Marcus wasn't sure if it was from cold or fear. He noticed she kept glancing at the door as if calculating whether she could escape. "I'm not going to hurt you," Marcus said softly, grabbing a blanket from the back compartment and wrapping it around her shoulders. "When's the last time you ate?" Zara's silence was answer enough. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked down at Amara, who had started to fuss from hunger. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a feeling he couldn't quite name. He'd spent years building walls around his heart, focusing only on business and success after his own difficult childhood. His mother had raised him alone after his father left, working 3 jobs to keep them fed. He'd sworn he'd never forget where he came from, but somewhere along the way, he'd gotten so caught up in making money that he'd stopped seeing the people around him. This woman and her baby reminded him of his mother's struggles, of nights when they'd had nothing but each other. "James, change of plans," Marcus said suddenly, making a decision that surprised even himself. "We're not going to the airport. Take us home." His driver's eyes widened slightly in the rearview mirror, but he nodded and changed direction. Marcus pulled out his phone and quickly typed a message to his assistant, canceling his flight and postponing all his meetings. His business partners would be furious, but for the first time in years, Marcus didn't care. He looked at Zara, who was staring at him with a mixture of confusion and hope. "What's your story?" he asked gently. "What happened to put you on that street corner?" As the car glided through the rainy streets toward Marcus's estate, Zara began to speak in a quiet, trembling voice. She'd been a nursing student with a bright future until she got pregnant. Her boyfriend had disappeared the moment she told him about the baby, and her deeply religious parents had thrown her out, calling her a disgrace to the family. She tried to finish school while working part-time, but childcare costs and medical bills had drained her savings. When she lost her job for missing too many shifts due to Amara's illness, everything fell apart. She'd been living in her car until it was repossessed 3 days ago, and since then, she and Amara had been on the streets. Marcus listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each detail. He'd seen poverty, had lived through it himself, but hearing Zara's story made him realize how easily anyone could fall through society's cracks. She hadn't made terrible choices or been irresponsible. She'd just been a young woman trying to do her best in impossible circumstances. "I'm not a bad person," Zara said suddenly, as if she needed him to believe that. "I love my daughter. I'd do anything for her. I just need a chance, just one opportunity to get back on my feet." Her voice cracked on the last words, and tears began streaming down her face. She tried to wipe them away quickly, clearly embarrassed to break down in front of a stranger. Marcus reached over and gently touched her hand. "I know you're not a bad person. I can see that. Listen, Zara, I'm about to do something that might sound crazy, but I want you to trust me." He pulled his key ring from his pocket and removed 2 keys from it. "These are the keys to my house. I'm supposed to be leaving on a business trip for 3 weeks, but even if I reschedule and leave tomorrow, the house would just be sitting empty. I want you and Amara to stay there. There's food, warm beds, security, everything you need." Zara's eyes went impossibly wide, and she shook her head in disbelief. "This is too much. Why would you do this for a stranger?" Marcus smiled sadly, looking out at the rain. "When I was 7, my mother and I were evicted from our apartment. We spent 2 nights sleeping in a park before a church custodian found us and let us stay in the basement. That man didn't know us, didn't owe us anything, but he gave us shelter when no one else would. He told my mother that kindness is never wasted, that every act of compassion ripples out into the world. I never forgot that." He turned back to Zara, his dark eyes intense and sincere. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but until tonight, I'm not sure I've ever really helped anyone the way that custodian helped us. Let me do this. Please." Zara was crying openly now, clutching Amara and the keys Marcus had pressed into her palm. "I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem like enough." She looked down at her daughter, who had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep. "I promise I'll take care of everything. I won't touch anything I shouldn't. I'll be so careful." Marcus shook his head and laughed softly. "Zara, it's a home, not a museum. Use whatever you need. Eat the food, wear clothes from the guest rooms if yours are wet, watch television, take hot baths. The house has a housekeeper named Patricia who comes 3 times a week. I'll call her tonight and let her know you'll be staying there. She'll help you with anything you need." The car pulled through massive iron gates and up a long driveway lined with manicured gardens. Even in the rain and darkness, Zara could see the house was enormous, more like a resort than a home. Her mouth fell open as they approached the main entrance, where warm lights glowed welcomingly through tall windows. "This is where you live?" she whispered, unable to believe this was really happening. Marcus nodded, suddenly seeing his home through her eyes and feeling oddly embarrassed by its extravagance. He'd worked hard for everything he had, but he'd never considered how it might look to someone who had nothing. "It's too big for one person, honestly. I'm hardly ever here anyway." James pulled up to the front entrance and quickly opened an umbrella to escort them inside. Marcus carried Zara's single-worn backpack, which contained everything she and Amara owned. The front door opened into a stunning foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that sparkled like diamonds. Zara stood frozen, afraid to step on the pristine floors with her wet, dirty shoes. Marcus noticed her hesitation and gently guided her forward. "Come on, let's get you both warm and fed." He led them through the house to a cozy guest suite on the first floor, complete with a bedroom, bathroom, and small sitting area. "This room is yours for as long as you need it. Zara walked into the room like she was in a dream, running her hand along the soft bedding and staring at the enormous bathroom with its deep soaking tub. Amara was waking up now, crying softly, and Zara's expression shifted from wonder to worry. She needs to eat. I have some formula in my bag, but it's almost gone. Marcus immediately pulled out his phone. I'll have James pick up whatever you need. Make me a list of everything, formula, diapers, clothes, anything at all. He paused, then added, actually, Patricia's daughter just had a baby last year. I bet she has things she could bring over tonight. Let me call her. Within an hour, Patricia had arrived with her arms full of baby supplies, food, and warm clothes. The older woman took one look at Zara and immediately wrapped her in a motherly hug, asking no questions but offering only kindness. Marcus watched from the doorway as Patricia helped Zara prepare a bottle for Amara and showed her how to work the baby monitor and room heater. Something warm bloomed in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite identify but that felt like coming home. When Patricia finally left, promising to return the next morning with groceries, Marcus found himself reluctant to leave. I should let you rest, he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. Zara looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. I still can't believe this is real. Why are you being so kind to us? Marcus walked further into the room and sat in the chair across from where she was feeding Amara. My mother died 3 years ago. Breast cancer. Before she passed, she told me she was proud of what I'd accomplished, but she worried I'd forgotten how to see people. She said I looked at numbers and deals instead of faces and hearts. He swallowed hard, the memory still painful. I think she was right. Tonight, when I saw you in that rain, I saw my mother. I saw every person who'd ever needed help and been invisible. I couldn't drive past you. Zara shifted Amara to her shoulder, gently patting her back until the baby burped. Your mother sounds like she was an amazing woman. Marcus smiled, his first genuine smile in a long time. She was. She would have liked you. She always said you could tell everything about a person by how they treated those weaker than themselves. The way you protect Amara, the way you've kept fighting even when everything fell apart, that takes real strength. They talked for another hour, sharing stories about their lives. Marcus found himself laughing at Zara's descriptions of her nursing school professors and admiring her determination to finish her degree someday. Finally, Amara fell asleep in Zara's arms, and exhaustion settled over both adults like a heavy blanket. Marcus stood to leave, then paused at the door. Zara, I want you to know something. This isn't charity, and you don't owe me anything. You're not a project or a tax write-off. You're a person who needed help, and I'm someone who can provide it. That's all this is. Zara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. As Marcus closed the door softly behind him, she looked down at her sleeping daughter and whispered, We're going to be okay, baby girl. We're finally going to be okay. Marcus lay in his own bed that night, unable to sleep despite his exhaustion. He kept thinking about Zara and Amara in the guest room downstairs, wondering if they were comfortable, if they had everything they needed. Around 2 a.m, he heard soft footsteps in the hallway and the quiet sound of the kitchen door opening. He got up and padded downstairs in his pajamas to find Zara standing in front of his massive refrigerator, staring at the abundance of food with an overwhelmed expression. She jumped when she noticed him, clutching her robe closed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. Amara fell back asleep, and I was just so hungry. Marcus smiled and walked past her to start pulling out ingredients. Don't apologize. Let me make you something. What sounds good? Zara protested, insisting she could make her own food, but Marcus was already heating a pan and pulling out eggs, cheese, and vegetables. As he cooked, they talked quietly in the dimly lit kitchen, and Marcus found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. He talked about the loneliness of success, how he'd achieved everything he'd ever wanted but felt empty inside. He described the moment his mother had died, holding his hand and asking him to promise he'd find something to care about besides money. "I made that promise, but I didn't keep it," he admitted, plating a perfect omelet for Zara. "Until tonight." Zara ate slowly, savoring every bite as if it were the finest meal she'd ever had. "You kept your promise tonight," she said softly. "You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them. That's what your mother wanted." They sat at the kitchen island, talking until the sky began to lighten outside the windows. Marcus told her about his business, how he'd started with one small tech startup and built an empire. Zara shared her dreams of becoming a nurse, of giving Amara a good life and maybe one day reconciling with her parents. As dawn broke, Marcus realized he hadn't missed his business trip at all. In fact, this felt more important than any deal he'd ever made. Over the next few days, an unexpected routine developed in Marcus's house. He decided to postpone his trip indefinitely, claiming he needed to handle some urgent matters at home. His business partners were frustrated but had no choice but to wait. Each morning, Marcus would wake to the sound of Amara's babbling through the baby monitor he'd installed in his own room, just to make sure they were okay. He'd head downstairs to find Zara already up, usually sitting in the sunroom with Amara, both of them looking more rested and healthy than they had that first night. Patricia had taken to Zara immediately, treating her like a daughter and showering Amara with grandmother affection. Marcus found himself arranging his work calls around Amara's nap times and making sure he was home for dinner. He'd never realized how quiet and empty his house had been until it was filled with baby giggles and Zara's soft singing. One evening, he came home to find Zara cooking in his kitchen, Amara and a bouncer nearby. "I hope you don't mind," Zara said quickly. "Patricia taught me how to use your stove, and I wanted to make dinner to thank you." The smell of home-cooked food filled the air, and Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. "Mind? This is the best thing that's happened to this house in years." They ate dinner together, and Marcus marveled at how natural it felt. Zara was funny and smart, her personality emerging as she became more comfortable. She told him about her dreams and fears, and he found himself opening up in ways he never had before. After dinner, Amara became fussy, and without thinking, Marcus reached for her. Zara handed over the baby, and Marcus walked around the living room, bouncing Amara gently until she settled against his shoulder. Looking up, he caught Zara watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're a natural," she said softly, and Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. A week after moving in, Zara received a phone call that changed everything. Her former nursing school advisor had heard she'd had to drop out and wanted to tell her about a special program for single mothers. The program offered free childcare, flexible scheduling, and financial assistance for students in difficult circumstances. "I can finish my degree," Zara told Marcus, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "I can actually finish what I started." Marcus immediately offered to help with anything she needed, but Zara gently refused. "You've already done so much. This is something I need to do on my own. But thank you for giving me the stability to even consider it." The conversation led to a longer discussion about the future. Zara insisted she couldn't stay in Marcus's house forever, that she needed to find her own place and stand on her own feet. Marcus felt a strange panic at the thought of her leaving, but he understood her need for independence. "At least stay until you finish the semester and get your first paycheck from wherever you end up working. Use this time to save money and focus on school without worrying about rent. Zara agreed, and they shook hands on it, both ignoring the electricity that passed between them when their hands touched. Neither wanted to acknowledge what was growing between them, afraid it would complicate the pure kindness that had brought them together. Marcus threw himself into supporting Zara's goals. He set up a study area in the library where she could work without distraction. He adjusted his schedule so he could watch Amara when Patricia wasn't available and Zara had classes. He found himself looking forward to their evening conversations, to Amara's giggles, to the way Zara had slowly filled his empty house with warmth and life. His business associates noticed the change in him too. He was happier, more present, less obsessed with the next deal. When his best friend and business partner, Damon, asked what had changed, Marcus simply said, "I remembered what matters." One evening, Marcus came home to find Zara crying in the living room, clutching her phone. Amara was asleep in her crib, and Zara was trying to muffle her sobs so she wouldn't wake her. Marcus immediately sat beside her, his heart clenching with worry. "What happened? Is it Amara? Are you okay?" Zara shook her head and handed him her phone. On the screen was a message from her mother, cold and harsh, telling Zara that she was no longer welcome in the family and that she'd made her choices and now had to live with the consequences. "I just wanted them to know Amara and I were okay," Zara said brokenly. "I thought maybe they'd want to meet their granddaughter." Marcus pulled Zara into his arms without thinking, letting her cry against his chest. He rubbed her back soothingly and whispered reassurances, anger burning in his chest toward people who could reject their own child. "Their loss," he said firmly. "Zara, you are an incredible mother and an amazing person. They're the ones missing out, not you." He pulled back to look at her face, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "You have people who care about you now. You have Patricia, who loves you like a daughter. You have me." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither was ready to explore. That night marked a shift in their relationship. They became more aware of each other, of casual touches that lingered too long, of looks that meant more than friendly concern. Marcus found himself thinking about Zara constantly, admiring her strength and resilience, drawn to her kindness and humor. Zara caught herself watching Marcus play with Amara and imagining a future she had no right to dream about. He was a billionaire who'd shown her charity, nothing more. But her heart didn't seem to understand that logic, especially when he looked at her with those intense eyes that made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced before. 2 months after that rainy night, Marcus's sister, Candace, came to visit. She'd heard about the woman and baby living in her brother's house and was immediately suspicious. Candace had always been protective of Marcus, especially after their mother died. Too many women had tried to trap Marcus with fake pregnancies or sob stories, hoping to access his wealth. When she arrived at the house, she was ready to dislike Zara on principle. But when she met the young woman studying at the kitchen table while Amara played nearby, her prepared speech died in her throat. Zara greeted her warmly, with no trace of calculation or manipulation, just genuine friendliness. Marcus watched nervously as his sister sized up Zara, knowing Candace's opinion mattered to him. They'd been through everything together, building their lives from nothing after their mother's death. If Candace didn't approve of Zara, it would complicate the feelings Marcus was trying desperately to ignore. But as the afternoon progressed, he saw his sister's expression soften. Candace asked Zara about her nursing studies and her dreams for the future, and Zara answered with honest passion. When Amara started fussing, Candace reached for her, and the two women chatted comfortably while taking care of the baby. By dinner time, Candace was laughing at Zara's stories and sharing her own. Later, when Zara had taken Amara upstairs for bed, Candace pulled Marcus aside. She's not what I expected, his sister admitted. She's real, Marcus. She actually cares about you, not your money. Marcus tried to play it cool, insisting they were just friends, but Candace saw right through him. I see the way you look at her. I see the way she looks at you when she thinks no one's watching. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus ran his hands over his face, feeling overwhelmed. What can I do? She's vulnerable, Candace. She's living in my house, dependent on my charity. If I told her how I felt, she might think she has to reciprocate out of gratitude. I can't put her in that position. Candace stayed for a week, and during that time, she watched the dynamic between Marcus and Zara with growing certainty. They moved around each other like planets in orbit, drawn together but maintaining careful distance. They had inside jokes and comfortable silences. Marcus lit up when Zara entered a room, and Zara's eyes followed Marcus whenever he wasn't looking. It would have been adorable if it wasn't so frustrating to watch. On her last night there, Candace decided to interfere. She invited Zara for tea while Marcus was working in his home office, ostensibly to say goodbye but really to have a serious conversation. I'm going to be direct because I think you need to hear this, Candace said, setting down her teacup. My brother is falling in love with you. Maybe he's already there. And unless I'm completely misreading things, you have feelings for him too. Zara's eyes went wide, and she immediately started to protest, but Candace held up her hand. Don't deny it. I've watched you two for a week. The question is, what are you afraid of? Zara looked down at her hands, struggling to put her fears into words. He saved my life. He gave me everything when I had nothing. How can I know if what I feel is real or just gratitude? And how can he know I'm not just using him? Candace reached across and squeezed Zara's hand. Love is always a risk. You can't guarantee the outcome. But I can tell you this, I've never seen my brother as happy as he's been these past 2 months. He's become the man our mother always hoped he'd be, and that's because of you and Amara. You brought life back into this house and into his heart. She paused, letting her words sink in. Marcus won't tell you how he feels because he's terrified of taking advantage of your situation. He's planning to set you up in your own apartment after this semester, with a job and everything you need, because he wants you to have choices. But maybe he deserves a choice too. Maybe he deserves to know how you really feel. Zara sat with Candace's words long after Marcus's sister had left. That night, she couldn't sleep, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. She got up to check on Amara and found Marcus already there, standing by the crib in the soft glow of the nightlight. He was watching Amara sleep with such tenderness that Zara's heart ached. I didn't mean to intrude, she whispered, but Marcus shook his head and gestured her over. They stood side by side, watching the baby they'd both come to love, and Zara made a decision. Marcus, we need to talk. His expression shifted to concern, but he nodded and followed her downstairs to the living room. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them feeling like a canyon. Zara twisted her hands in her lap, trying to find the courage to speak. I've been here for 2 months now, and my life has completely changed. I'm back in school, Amara is healthy and happy, and I finally have hope for the future. All of that is because of you. Marcus started to protest, to downplay his role, but Zara continued. Please, let me finish. I need to say this. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. When I first came here, I was so broken I couldn't imagine feeling anything but grateful. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Marcus leaned forward, his dark eyes intense as he searched her face. Changed how? His voice was rough with an emotion Zara couldn't quite name. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to be brave in this moment. I started seeing you, really seeing you. Not the billionaire who saved me, but the man who makes silly faces to make Amara laugh. The man who stays up late helping me study even though he has meetings in the morning. The man who fills this huge house with his presence but somehow still feels lonely. She moved closer on the couch, closing some of the distance between them. I started having feelings I have no right to have, and I don't know what to do about them. For a long moment, Marcus didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he reached out and cupped Zara's face in his hands, his thumbs gently caressing her cheeks. You have every right to feel whatever you feel. And I need you to know something. These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. Not because I helped someone or did a good deed, but because you and Amara became part of my life. I wake up excited to see you both. I come home early just to have dinner with you. I find myself imagining futures I never thought I'd want. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm falling in love with you, Zara. Maybe I've been falling since that first night in the rain. Zara's eyes filled with tears as she covered Marcus's hands with her own. I love you too. I think I have for a while now, but I was so scared it was just gratitude or dependence. I was afraid that once I stood on my own feet, these feelings would disappear. Marcus pulled her closer, until their foreheads were touching. And now? He asked softly. Zara smiled through her tears. Now I know that what I feel is real. You've given me every opportunity to be independent, every tool I need to succeed on my own. The fact that I still want you, still need you in my life, that has to mean something, doesn't it? Marcus answered by closing the final distance between them and kissing her gently, tentatively, as if she were something precious he was afraid to break. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness and months of denied attraction pouring into that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. I don't want you to move out, Marcus admitted. I know you need your independence, and I respect that, but I don't want you to leave. I want you and Amara here with me, not because I'm helping you, but because we're building something together. Zara laughed, a sound of pure joy. I don't want to leave either. I love it here. Amara loves it here. But we need to figure this out the right way. I need to finish school and get a job, prove to myself and to you that I'm with you because I want to be, not because I need to be. They talked for hours that night, planning a future neither had dared to imagine. Marcus would support Zara through school, but she'd contribute to household expenses once she started working, even if it was a token amount. They'd take things slowly, dating properly, building their relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine love rather than circumstance and gratitude. As the sun rose, they fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, both feeling like they'd finally found home. When Patricia arrived that morning and saw them sleeping peacefully, she simply smiled, covered them with a blanket, and tiptoed away to care for Amara. Some things, she knew, were meant to be. The next few months were a beautiful whirlwind. Marcus and Zara navigated their new relationship carefully, always mindful of the unusual circumstances that had brought them together. Marcus courted Zara properly, taking her on dates when Patricia could watch Amara, bringing her flowers, and treating her like she was the most precious thing in his world. Zara threw herself into her studies, determined to graduate at the top of her class and prove she could achieve her dreams. Amara thrived, growing bigger and more personality-filled every day, clearly adored by both adults who'd become her parents in every way that mattered. But not everyone was happy about their relationship. When news leaked to the press that billionaire Marcus Wellington was dating a formerly homeless woman with a baby, the media circus began. Reporters camped outside the gates, trying to get photos and interviews. The stories ranged from heartwarming to cruel, with some praising Marcus's kindness and others suggesting Zara was a gold digger who'd manipulated her way into his life. Zara tried to ignore the headlines, but it was hard when strangers felt entitled to comment on her life and judge her choices. Marcus wanted to sue every outlet that printed lies, but Zara convinced him it would only make things worse. "Let them talk," she said firmly. "We know the truth." The real blow came when Zara's ex-boyfriend, Terrence, saw the news coverage and suddenly reappeared. He showed up at the gates of Marcus's estate, claiming he wanted to meet his daughter and be part of her life. Zara was torn between anger at his timing and fear that he might have legal rights. Marcus hired the best family lawyer in the state, and they prepared for a potential custody battle. But when Terrence's attorney laid out the evidence of his complete abandonment, unpaid child support, and clear motivation of accessing Marcus's wealth, Terrence backed down. He signed away his parental rights in exchange for a payment that would make him disappear, and just like that, he was gone again. Zara held Amara close that night, grateful for Marcus's protection but hating that her past could be resolved with money. As Zara's graduation approached, Marcus planned a surprise. He'd been working on something for months, a project that combined his business skills with his desire to help others the way he'd helped Zara. He'd partnered with several universities to create a comprehensive support program for single parents trying to complete their education. The program would provide childcare, financial assistance, mentorship, and job placement services. He wanted to announce it at Zara's graduation, with her blessing, as a way to honor what they'd been through and help others in similar situations. When he told Zara about the program, she burst into tears and threw her arms around him. "You really do understand," she said, crying happy tears. "This isn't about charity or pity. This is about giving people the tools and support they need to help themselves." Marcus held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I learned that from you. You never wanted a handout. You just needed a chance, a moment to catch your breath and regroup. That's what this program will do for others." They worked together on the final details, with Zara providing insight from her own experience. The program would be called the Second Chance Initiative, and it would start at 5 universities with plans to expand. Marcus had committed significant funding, enough to help thousands of students over the coming years. Graduation day arrived sunny and perfect. Zara walked across the stage in her nursing uniform, accepting her diploma with a smile that could light up the world. Marcus stood in the audience, holding Amara and cheering louder than anyone else. Patricia sat beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue and beaming with pride. After the ceremony, Marcus took the stage to announce the Second Chance Initiative. He spoke about meeting a brave young woman in the rain, about how one moment of choosing to see someone's humanity had changed his life forever. He didn't name Zara directly, but everyone who knew their story understood. The audience erupted in applause, and Zara felt her heart swell with love and pride. That evening, Marcus threw a graduation party at the house for Zara's small circle of friends and the family they built together. Patricia was there with her daughter and grandson. Candace had flown in for the celebration. Even James, Marcus's loyal driver, joined them. As Zara looked around at the people gathered to celebrate her accomplishment, she was overwhelmed by how much her life had transformed. A year ago, she'd been alone and desperate. Now she was surrounded by love, about to start her dream job at a prestigious hospital, and planning a future with a man who saw her as an equal partner despite their different backgrounds. After the guests left, Marcus asked Zara to take a walk with him in the garden. The evening air was warm and sweet with the scent of flowers. They walked hand in hand, Amara sleeping peacefully in Patricia's care inside. Marcus led Zara to a small gazebo at the back of the property, where fairy lights twinkled like stars. "I've been thinking about that night I found you in the rain," Marcus began, his voice soft and serious. "I think about how easily I could have driven past. How one moment of impulse changed everything. You've told me I saved you, but Zara, you saved me too. You brought meaning back into my life. You reminded me what matters." Marcus pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Zara's breath caught in her throat. "I know we've only been officially together for a few months, but I've known you for a year. I've watched you fight and grow and blossom into the incredible woman you were always meant to be. I've fallen more in love with you every single day." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, simple but elegant. "I'm not asking you to marry me right now. I know you want to start your career, establish yourself, prove to yourself and the world that you're independent. But I want you to know my intentions. I want you to wear this ring as a promise. When you're ready, when you feel like you've achieved everything you need to achieve, I'll be here waiting. Zara Williams, will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and Amara?" Zara was crying and laughing at the same time, nodding before he'd even finished the question. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Marcus slipped the promise ring onto her finger, and they kissed under the fairy lights, both thinking about how much can change in a year, how one act of kindness can ripple out in ways no one can predict. "I want to marry you," Zara said when they finally broke apart. "Not right now, like you said, but soon. I want to start my job, work for 6 months to prove to myself that I can stand on my own, and then I want to marry you. I want Amara to have your name, and I want to build our family together." Marcus held her close, feeling complete in a way he'd never imagined possible. They stood in the gazebo for a long time, making plans and dreaming together. Zara wanted a small wedding, just family and close friends. Marcus wanted to adopt Amara officially, to become her father-in-law as well as in heart. They talked about having more children someday, about growing old together in this house that had become a home. When they finally went inside, Patricia took one look at the ring on Zara's finger and let out a squeal of joy that woke Amara. The baby started crying, but when Marcus picked her up and she settled immediately against his chest, everyone laughed. This was their family, unconventional perhaps, but bound together by love and the choices they'd made on one rainy night. 6 months later, Zara was thriving at the hospital. She'd proven herself to be a skilled and compassionate nurse, earning the respect of doctors and patients alike. She'd received 2 raises already and had been asked to mentor new nursing graduates. The best part was coming home after her shifts to Marcus and Amara, to family dinners and bedtime stories and the comfortable rhythm they'd established. She'd insisted on contributing equally to household expenses, even though Marcus's income dwarfed hers. He'd agreed, understanding her need to feel like an equal partner. They'd opened a joint account for household costs, and Zara felt proud every time she made a deposit. The Second Chance initiative had launched successfully, helping over 200 single parents in its first semester. Zara volunteered as a mentor, sharing her story and encouraging others who were struggling. She'd reconnected with some of her former classmates from nursing school, many of whom had judged her when she got pregnant and dropped out. Now they saw her success and treated her with newfound respect. Zara had learned to hold her head high, to own her story without shame. She'd made mistakes, yes, but she'd also made choices that prioritized her daughter's well-being, and she'd fought her way back from the bottom. That was nothing to be ashamed of. One evening, Marcus came home with news that made Zara's heart skip. Her parents had reached out to him through his business office, asking if they could meet their granddaughter. Zara's first instinct was anger, remembering the cruel rejection and the pain they'd caused. But as she looked at Amara, now a happy toddler taking her first steps, she wondered if everyone deserved a second chance. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked, leaving the decision entirely in her hands. Zara thought for a long moment. "I want to meet with them first, without Amara. I need to understand why they're reaching out now and what they really want. They hurt me deeply, and I won't let them hurt my daughter." The meeting was arranged at a neutral restaurant. Marcus offered to come for support, but Zara insisted on going alone. She needed to face her parents on her own terms, as the strong, independent woman she'd become, not as the desperate girl they'd rejected. When she walked into the restaurant and saw them sitting at a corner table, both looking older and smaller than she remembered, something shifted inside her. They weren't the powerful figures who'd haunted her nightmares. They were just two people who'd made a terrible mistake and were living with the consequences. Her mother, Grace, stood first, tears already streaming down her face. "Zara, baby, I'm so sorry." Her father, David, looked broken, unable to meet her eyes. Zara sat down, keeping her spine straight and her expression neutral. "I need to understand why you're here now. You threw me out when I needed you most. You called me shameful and told me I was dead to you. Why the sudden change?" Grace reached across the table, but Zara pulled her hands back. "Please, let me explain. After you left, I was angry. I thought we'd taught you better, that you'd embarrassed us in front of our church community. But as months passed, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I started having nightmares about you and the baby suffering." David finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "We saw you on the news, with that man, the billionaire. At first, I was angry again, thinking you'd just found another way to disappoint us. But then I saw the interview where he talked about meeting you in the rain, about how brave you were, how you protected your baby even when you had nothing." His voice broke. "I realized we'd thrown out our daughter when she needed us most. We failed you, Zara. We were so concerned with what people thought that we forgot to be parents. I am so deeply ashamed." Grace added softly, "We don't expect you to forgive us. We don't deserve it. But we're hoping, maybe, you'd let us meet our granddaughter. Let us try to be better grandparents than we were parents." Zara sat silently for a moment, processing their words. She could see their remorse was genuine, but the hurt they'd caused ran deep. "You rejected me when I was sleeping on the street with a newborn baby. I was terrified and alone, and you didn't care. Do you know what that did to me?" Her voice was steady but firm. "I'm not that scared girl anymore. I'm a nurse. I'm engaged to a wonderful man who loves me and Amara. I've built a life without you, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished." She paused, seeing them both wilt under her words. "But I also know that Amara deserves to know her grandparents, if you're willing to do the work to be in her life properly. This isn't about you earning back a relationship with me. This is about you building a new relationship with your granddaughter." They talked for 2 more hours, setting boundaries and expectations. Zara made it clear that any relationship with Amara would be supervised at first, that they'd have to earn trust gradually. Grace and David agreed to everything, grateful for any chance to be part of their granddaughter's life. They apologized again and again, and while Zara wasn't ready to fully forgive, she was willing to let them try to make amends. She told them about her journey, about Marcus finding her in the rain, about finishing school and starting her career. As she spoke, she saw her parents' expressions shift from shame to something like pride, and it was enough to crack open the door to healing, even if just a little. When Zara got home that night, Marcus was waiting up for her. She collapsed into his arms and told him everything. "I'm not ready to let them fully back into my life, but I can't deny Amara the chance to have grandparents if they're genuinely trying to change." Marcus kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you. You handled that with such grace and strength. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." They went upstairs together and looked in on Amara, who was sleeping peacefully in her crib, clutching the stuffed elephant Marcus had won for her at a fair. Looking at their daughter, Zara knew she'd made the right choice. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean allowing room for people to grow and change, the same way she'd been given room to grow. 2 weeks later, Zara and Marcus got married in the garden where he'd proposed. It was a small ceremony with only their closest loved ones present. Patricia cried through the entire event. Candace served as maid of honor. James walked Zara down the aisle since she wasn't ready to ask her father. Grace and David attended but sat in the back, grateful just to be included. Amara was the flower girl, toddling down the aisle throwing petals everywhere and making everyone laugh. When Marcus and Zara exchanged vows, they promised not just to love each other, but to continue choosing compassion, to never forget where they'd come from, and to help others find their own second chances. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Zara thought back to that rainy night that had changed everything. She'd been at her lowest point, convinced her life was over, that she'd failed herself and her daughter. But in her darkest moment, someone had seen her. Someone had stopped when everyone else drove past. Marcus had given her keys to his house, but more than that, he'd given her hope, dignity, and love. And in return, she'd given him purpose, family, and a reason to remember that wealth means nothing if you can't share it with others. Their love story had started with one impulsive act of kindness, and it had bloomed into something neither of them could have imagined. As the sun set over their garden, Marcus whispered in her ear, "Thank you for being in that rain," and Zara whispered back, "Thank you for stopping." It was the perfect ending, and the perfect beginning.